Today, we become legends.
We've all done it, whether intentionally or via your team troll picking to the heavens. The all-physical or all-magical conquest teams certainly have their work cut out for them. But which one would actually win if we built optimal teams and pit them against each other? Let's find out. So as always with my fantasy team videos, we're looking to create the strongest possible conquest team for the current meta. This means we will be looking at the current strongest meta gods for each role, but also considering team synergy and, specifically in this case, ways to work around having only one damage type. Once we're done, we'll pit these two teams against each other to see which one comes out on top. Alright, but with that said, let's jump in with the physical team up first. So physicals inherently have a small advantage in this contest due to their better access to percent pen and shred, as well as the hunter class being available to them. Due to these teams only having one damage type, stacking tons of specific defense against them will be the best way to win. In this scenario, even damage dealers will almost certainly be picking up at least one defense item, and physicals generally have better ways to deal with this. So jumping in first with our ADC, we're of course looking at the hunters for this one, and ideally someone with good shred capabilities. There's basically two routes you can go here. We could grab either of Martikaras or AMC due to their built-in percent shred on their ultimates, or we could go with a more auto-attack focused shredder ADC like Rama, Hachiman, Ishtar, or Izanami, who herself also has built-in percent pen, but that only applies for her, whereas Marty and AMC applies for the whole team on that target because it's protection reduction. Either route is fine here I think, but I'll give the slight edge to Marty despite being worse in the meta than the others. That percent shred on his ultimate will be invaluable to the team. Supporting that Marty, we of course don't have access to a lot of the best supports being Guardians, but we do still have a handful of warriors and assassins that can work there. I think the best choice here is just Horus. He was designed for the role and has built-in shred as well, even though it's flat shred, which won't be quite as useful as percent shred in this scenario, but it's still a solid addition to the team. Moving on to jungle, where we have access to the main class once again and have plenty to choose from. There's actually a ton of really synergistic picks available here, the best among them being Nemesis for her percent shred ultimate, Kali for her built-in pen and general tank shred capabilities, and Thanatos for his execute, built-in flat pen, and early game dominance. All three of these will be amazing additions to the team, so I think I'll decide this one based on meta relevance, which of course gives the edge to Thanatos, who's been the #1 jungler for a long time now. His execute will be super useful for deleting those defense stacking tanks once the carries have burned them down a bit. Next up we have the mid lane, where it's a pretty simple choice. We used Marty for ADC and left the B open for a reason. AMC's built-in shred on his ultimate, as well as just being one of the better mid laners in the current meta anyway, easily gives him the spot for our physical mid laner in lieu of the traditional mages. And finally we have the solo lane, where we again have access to the main class in warriors, so we're spoiled for choice here. There's a ton of useful picks available, with the best among them being Achilles for his execute, Amaterasu for her 10% damage boost passive and objective presence, and maybe Surtur since he at least has some magical damage on his wand that could get past defense stacking. And while Surtur would be neat, I think overall going for Achilles is probably best here. He's pretty strong in the meta, and having a double execute team will definitely be useful against the defense stackers and enemy tanks. So that's our all physical team: Martikaras Horus duo lane, Thanatos jungle, AMC mid, and Achilles solo. But how will they stack up to the all magical team? Let's find out. As mentioned before, magicals are at an inherent disadvantage here due to weaker shred in their itemization and no access to hunters, but they do have magical ADCs at their disposal which do have adequate shred, and an ace up their sleeve which we'll get to in a minute, but I'm sure you all know what it is. So jumping in first with the magical team's ADC, we are of course looking at the 4 magical ADCs here, in Sol, Kronos, Oleron, and Freya. None of these are too amazing in the current meta compared to a hunter, and while Kronos isn't even the best of these meta-wise, I think he fits the team's needs best in this case. The other 3 are somewhat inconsistent in their auto-attack damage output, and with very few traditional auto-attackers available for the magicals, Kronos' consistent tower shred and objective damage will actually work better here. Combined with Polynomicon, he can at least try to match the objective shred and tower push of the physical team. Supporting our Kronos, we're obviously chilling since we have access to Guardians. The most notable ones for this team in my opinion are Fafnir for his team-wide attack speed and damage boost to help shred objectives and towers, Athena for pure meta power as the strongest overall support in the game, Atlas for his built-in shred on the ult and amazing single target lockdown, and Ganesha for a similar reason with his ultimate's protection shred. This is probably the hardest pick of the video so far, as any of these picks will be truly amazing for the team, but I think it mostly comes down to Atlas's percent shred or Fafnir's Dragon Form Coerce boost. I think overall I'm leaning slightly more towards Fafnir to fix the magical team's sieging and objective burn. I know he's not good in the meta, but I feel like he really fills some gaps for this team. They will of course have great poke and objective secure with the mages, so shoring up their structure push and shred with Fafnir's Coerce is the way to go. Moving into the jungle, jungle, we have the usual suspects of the magical assassins in Alquang and Maman, as well as Hebo, who also works pretty well as a jungler. We don't really need more burst on a team full of mages, so Hebo is out, and while Maman's tank shred is excellent, Alquang's is not far behind, but he also has that all-important execute, so I'll give him the slight edge as our jungler. Next up is mid, where we once again are spoiled for choice with the main class for the role. That said, there's really just one option here realistically, that being Morrigan. Being able to transform into a physical god from the enemy team, even if just briefly, will be invaluable here, as she will be able to bypass all that magical defense stacking from the enemy team, and or force them to even build a little bit of physical defense just to deal with her ultimate. Which is also good as it helps out the rest of their team because they won't have as much magical defense. This is the magical team's ace up their sleeve that really keeps them in the running against the physicals. And finally we have the solo lane, where we don't have the main class but do still have some solid options in Artio's passive percent protection shred, Bake Kujira as a simply powerful meta pick, and Hades, who has flat and percent shred on his ultimate and is a great lane dominator to help keep this more late game team in the running. Overall, I think Hades is probably the best pick here, but it's definitely close. He's not on top of the meta like he once was, but is still solid and fills a big gap in the team's early game pressure, plus that protection shred on his ultimate is always nice for this scenario. So that's our magical team: Chronos Fafnir duo lane, Alquang jungle, Morrigan mid, and Hades solo. Let's pit these two teams against each other to see who comes out on top. So the physicals have an overall stronger and more balanced team that's better equipped to deal with the issues of being single damage type due to the percent shred on the two hunters and executes on Thanatos and Achilles. The magicals are lagging behind a little bit and had to pick a few weaker gods for the meta just to fix holes in their game plan. That said, they do have the ace in the hole of the Morrigan being able to completely wipe out enemies that go heavy into stacking magical defense. Also, in general, magical defense items are worse than physical ones, and they have easy access to stuff like Midgardian Mail to shut down the hunters and Emperor's Armor to help their sieging. Plus, most objective and tower damage is physical, so they can more easily tank up on sieges compared to the physicals that have to build magical defense. This is an insanely close call, and it really comes down to whether Morrigan can clean house or will be shut down quickly enough by the physicals. If they can focus out Morrigan and not let her nuke the team during her ultimate, the physicals will win easily due to their more consistently powerful team. But there's always that threat of Morrigan finding a way in and blowing up two people who have no defense against their own team's lineup. This might be a spicy take, so definitely leave your own thoughts down below, but I think I value the consistency of the physical team over the Hail Mary Morrigan pick for the magicals. Especially over the last few years of Smite, we've seen more and more that stacked physical teams have no problem winning games if you draft them right, and while they usually do have a Guardian and support at least for some kind of magical damage, the vast majority of it comes from 4 physicals in those cases, and they can still do work. They simply have the better team in every aspect except Morrigan. It's not a clean win by any means, and one bad team fight where Morrigan goes ham with an ult could flip it on its head, but overall, in the long game, I think I give the advantage to the physicals. But what do you think? Leave your thoughts down below, and I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.